The South China Sea is an important waterway that carries a sizable percentage of world trade. However, China's territorial claims in the region have heightened hostilities with neighboring countries. A U.S. Navy aircraft carrier passed by a Chinese survey ship that was working in Indonesia's Exclusive Economic Zone, or EEZ, as it carried out its responsibility to guarantee the freedom of all nations to function in international waters. The aircraft carrier was 50 nautical miles away. The American aircraft carrier in the South China Sea delivers a strong message to the Chinese Navy that it won't accept any interference in the disputed waters, which could have important geopolitical ramifications. Why does a U.S. aircraft carrier warn China's Navy not to mess with the SCS? How did China react when the US Nimitz carrier hit a collection of ships in the SCS? We'll be taking a closer look at the recent information and the causes of the U.S. aircraft carrier's warning to the Chinese Navy not to mess in the South China Sea, the geopolitical implications of this incident, the reasons behind the U.S. Navy's presence in the region, and the potential for further escalation between the U.S. and China are discussed. Join us as we delve into this critical issue and try to make sense of this rapidly evolving situation. The U.S. is walking a tightrope in the South China Sea, balancing its commitment to maintaining freedom of navigation with the need to avoid further escalation of tensions with China. One of the world's most vital waterways from a geopolitical perspective is the South China Sea, with an annual transaction volume of over $3 trillion. China, the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan are all countries with conflicting territorial claims that border the sea. China has claimed nearly the entire ocean, including islands and reefs that are also the territory of other countries. China bases its claims on a so-called 9-dash line that extends far out into the ocean and crosses over other nations' exclusive economic zones. As a result, there are now tensions between China and some of its neighbors, especially the Philippines, which has disputed some of China's territorial claims. The United States and China are still at odds. The U.S. has increased its military presence in the region in reaction to China's assertiveness in the South China Sea. The international community continues to have serious concerns about the continuing tensions in the South China Sea. The conflict has implications not only for the countries directly involved, but also for international trade and security. The U.S. and the Philippines' deployment of aircraft carriers shows their commitment to upholding security and stability in the area. However, the dispute is still ongoing, and there is a high chance that it will escalate. The world pays attention whenever American aircraft carriers go because they are still among the best in the world. The USS Nimitz is one of them, a huge vessel that could be compared to a floating city. But its presence in this area is intended to draw attention from one power, namely China, a rival that is becoming more assertive. For 7 years, Lieutenant Ben Bashong was a member of the U.S. Navy. He and his colleagues are aware of the elevated levels of tension in this area. He said, "I'd just like to add that we're always prepared and training so that we can respond if we ever get called." There are several fronts in the conflict with China, and practically all of them are getting riskier. China does consider this area to be its backyard. Chinese naval forces have expanded quickly in recent years and have conducted more operations in their immediate neighborhood, especially in the South China Sea. China claimed it had stopped an American warship from sailing near the disputed Paracel Islands in the South China Sea, but the U.S. has refuted this and claims it was acting in accordance with international law. According to the U.S. naval commander, "We will sail, operate, and fly wherever international law permits, and my message to the PRC is that we are resolute in our refusal to be intimidated or coerced, and that we will remain here and comply with international norms. We don't want to fight China. We don't want to control China. We want to reestablish international standards that will benefit everyone," he added. There are a lot of subtle and unseen aspects to the escalating tensions with China. The message is very clear that any escalation would have serious repercussions because there is so much about the growing tension with China that is invisible and covert. As the area becomes more fragmented and the stakes rise, many Asian nations are drawn closer to the U.S. and one another. Side note, the U.S.-China relationship has been strained in recent years, with disputes over trade, human rights, and the origins of COVID-19. The situation in the South China Sea is just one example of the geopolitical tensions between these two global superpowers. It's important to remember that many countries claim sovereignty over different islands and territories in the South China Sea, making it a hotly contested region. According to global marine traffic records, the Chinese survey ship Haiyang DG-10 has been working in the Natuna Sea off Indonesia since late August. The USS Carl Vinson was spotted traveling close by. Uniquely, the American supercarrier also broadcast its location, which analysts believe was done to demonstrate that it was free to operate in foreign waters. China claims ownership of the majority of the South China Sea. Under international law, the 12 nautical miles of sea that a nation's terrestrial territory extends into are referred to as its territorial waters. China includes the water surrounding its recently recovered man-made islands within its maritime jurisdiction, despite objections from other nations in the region. Rear Admiral Dan Martin, the commander of the Carl Vinson Strike Group, stated that any coastal state rule or regulation must not conflict with the overflight and navigation rights that are universally protected by international law. The freedoms of the oceans, such as freedom of navigation, overflight, and lawful commerce, are seriously threatened by illegitimate and expansive maritime claims, especially those in the South China Sea. We won't be compelled or coerced to renounce the international norms. Fun fact: the U.S. Navy has the largest aircraft carrier fleet in the world, with a total of 11 carriers currently in service. To put that in perspective, the combined fleets of the other navies in the world only have 10 active aircraft carriers. A third of the world's maritime trade passes through the South China Sea each year, and the U.S. naval and air forces occasionally execute so-called Freedom of Navigation Operations, or FONOPs, to challenge China's maritime claims there. These FONOPs have drawn repeated criticism from Beijing. The USS Carl Vinson's deployment was deemed provocative by the Global Times, a publication that is a part of People's Daily, China's government mouthpiece. According to the Global Times, this is the 6th time a U.S. aircraft carrier has gone to the South China Sea this year, but it is the first time the F-35C stealth fighter and the brand new CMV-22B Osprey tilt-rotor aircraft has been used. According to a military analyst quoted in the newspaper, China has placed its army on alert and is fully capable and confident in dealing with such provocations. The Carl Vinson Strike Group commander, however, stated that all of our interactions with the Chinese fleet so far have been professional and secure. We do have some escorts as we sail, but neither the water nor the air have shown any signs of aggressive maneuvering that would worry me. He said the USS Carl Vinson would probably not be able to make any port calls while on its assignment due to COVID-19 restrictions. However, the extended deployment of the aircraft carrier should demonstrate to our partners and allies that we remain with them. As our oldest treaty ally in Asia, he reaffirmed the United States' pledge to defend the Philippines, a claimant to the South China Sea, in the event of an attack. An armed assault against the Philippine Armed Forces, government aircraft, or vessels in the Pacific, including in the South China Sea, would result in a duty under the U.S.-Philippine Mutual Defense Treaty, Martin continued. According to a Philippine statement, both parties agreed to work on a bilateral maritime framework that promotes cooperation in the maritime realm. In terms of determining whether the treaty was applicable in the Pacific maritime area, China has been exerting growing pressure on the Philippines. Philippine Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana asserted that the U.S. treaty with Japan, its adversary from World War II, was more explicit than the one with Manila while he was in Washington for talks with American officials. Lorenzana claimed that Manila was attempting to upgrade and update the U.S. relationship while speaking at the Center for Strategic and International Studies think tank. He pushed for more clarity regarding the extent of American obligations as they relate to the treaty that the Allies signed 70 years ago. As tensions continue to rise between the U.S. and China in the South China Sea, one thing is clear: the U.S. Navy is not backing down. Will China heed the warning from the American aircraft carrier and avoid further escalation? Or will this conflict only intensify in the days to come? Comment below. Thank you for watching. Click the like button to like our video, and click on the subscribe button to subscribe to our channel, and click on the bell icon to receive updates when we upload more videos to the channel. Be sure to subscribe for more updates on this ongoing situation.